Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Lessons Learned, the dumbest thing I've ever done with money. My name is Suzanne, and I'm the head coach at Grace Financial Coaching. And today, my guest is Jay Zigmont of Childfree Wealth. Jay is the founder and CEO of Childfree Wealth, and this is a life and financial planning firm dedicated to helping child-free and permanently childless people. Dr. Jay is a certified financial planner, author of the book Portraits of Child-Free Wealth, and the upcoming book, The Child-Free Guide to Life and Money. Jay, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me. It is afternoon here. You said morning. I mean, I was wondering, do you say good morning based on where you are or where the people are that's listening?
I say good morning. I'm very geocentric, so I say good morning based on where I am. So,
all right, like that. At least we know. Miss Manners probably a better answer for that.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And frankly, if you're listening to this at midnight, I mean, I guess technically it's morning then also, isn't it?
That is.
Well, Jay, tell us about the child-free community that you serve. How big of a population is this?
Yeah, so it's just a little definition. So when I say child-free, I don't mean like we don't have kids this week or like they're out of school or something. I mean people who don't have kids and aren't planning on having kids ever. So that could be by choice or not by choice. Tends to people that are by choice or child-free, not by choice or childless, but whatever term works for you. And a recent study in Michigan just found that just about 25% of adults over 18 are child-free. So it's a huge number. And in comparison, the same study found just about 8% of the population was LGBTQ+. So really, we're talking about like triple the size of that community, and there's huge overlap between them. But nobody would have guessed there was that many people out there that are child-free.
Yeah, that is really interesting, especially in the sense that we're also not including empty nesters in this definition. These are people, those people had children in the house and they are no longer in the house, but that still qualifies you as having kids. So we're not even talking about the empty nesters.
Right. We're talking specifically about people that never, ever, ever, ever had kids. No adoption, no, stepkids, nothing.
Gotcha. So what led you to serve this particular population?
Yeah. So my wife and I are child-free. And when I was studying to become a certified financial planner, the interesting thing was there was never once a mention of being child-free in any of the education. It just doesn't exist. And my wife and I are both PhDs and researchers by nature. And I started researching this. And the question I started asking was like, how weird are we? And I mean, we are weird. Like we'll sit around at night talking about research studies. So that makes it a little weird. But like, how weird are we for being child-free in our life we're living and all that? And come to find out, there's a whole lot of us out there, but had no clue. And once I figured out that something like a quarter of the US are child-free, I'm like, well, then how come all financial planning assumes you're going to have kids?
Yeah.
When I say all, like, I mean, maybe there's a small percentage somewhere, but like 99 point something percent says you have kids, and it's in everything. So for example, the way we say is there's a standard life script. It says you go to school, you get married, you have kids, you retire, pass them on to the next generation. It's part of the American dream, the 2.5 kids, white picket fence, the house, all that. And it's so pervasive that it's like, wait, what happens if you're not? Yeah. And by the way, it's not just as easy as like, oop, pop kids out of the plan and everything else financial. No, it changes just about everything about your life and finances.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's funny that we're having this conversation now because literally last week, my husband and I met with our financial planner. We do not have children, so we are part of the population that you have. And we started talking about things like long-term care insurance. And unfortunately, my parents both died pretty young. So this is something, even though I'm 40, we have started talking about what's going to happen to me if I get sick, if I go down that road that both my parents went down, unfortunately, with cancer. And so what's that going to look like? The answer is not, oh, the kids will take care of me. It'll be fine. Because there are no kids to take care of me. And so one of the things that I specifically said, and tell me if your clients, feel this way, I get concerned because the chances of me going before my husband just based on familial, timing are pretty good. My family does not live to 100 years old. But his family, we have a couple of those on that side. And so here we are at age 40 talking about long-term care insurance. And my poor financial planner is trying to figure out at what age do I start buying long-term care insurance, knowing my family has some of these neurological things and cancer is a big part. So my concern is almost more leaving my husband to his own devices, because I'm probably going to be the one who goes first. Do you ever have clients express something like that?
Yeah, we often get this question of, well, who's going to take care of you when you're older? And I kind of have a love-hate thing with this question. My hate thing of it is that's implying that you expect somebody to take care of you. You know, like when people ask you, like, who's going to take, like, you're expecting your kids are going to do. My love thing is it's a good discussion. I think here's the data. I'll get to your answer, your question in a second, but let me give you some data because it really is going to change people's picture. So the U.S. Census looked at adults over 55, looked at people who are childless, meaning no biological children, and they found 2.5% got any financial support from family.
Oh, wow.
So that's like nothing.
Yeah.
But in the same population, adults over 55 in the US, they found that 1.5% of parents got any financial support from their family. So you think your kids are going to take care of you? Guess what? Nope.
No.
No. And so the difference is we know we have to handle it. So let's talk about you, for example. If you were my client, my goal for long-term care is to figure out a solution by mid-40s. So we're in the right ballpark. Here's the reason. Mid-40s is usually when it's cheapest to get long-term care insurance, or we can put aside money or other options. But there are two things you said in there. You got to watch out. So now you said your parents had a history of cancer, and you mentioned neurological. So here's what happens. If one of your parents had some type of cognitive decline, your cost for long-term care goes up by 50%. If both of them did, you cannot get any long-term care insurance.
Wow. That's so crazy, especially with what I feel, and this is based on just me being an adult and having friends who are slightly older. I feel like everyone I know has one parent in some sort of cognitive decline.
So here's the trick. This is part of the reason why I say 45 or mid-40s is if you get the quote in your mid-40s and your parents are still in good health, you're good. Once they get that box checked for dementia, Alzheimer's, other things, your prices just went up. So like there is a timing issue. And what ends up happening is single women have the highest cost. So on average, women will use 3.7 years of care. It costs about $115,000 for a skilled nursing facility for a single room. So when we're talking huge money, then it's 2.2 years. So it's a huge cost. And what happens is people do prices for long-term care, and I'll throw something you can throw on the show links. It's got example policies. I don't sell long-term care insurance, but I've got, so many clients ask about it. Like, here are the examples and look how expensive it is. But it's expensive because the care is stupidly expensive.
Yeah.
And you end up with limited choices. When I work with clients, the question is not only like how you're going to pay for long-term care, but who's going to make the choice for you? Who's going to be your power of attorney, your executor, all that fun stuff. And it's all of these things that change. And it's like, oh, so now I got to worry about me and my husband in your case. And now we're saying, all right, how do we make sure one of you doesn't mess up the other one? Because that's the actual issue. Like, if you're single, you have to have a long-term care policy to cover you or money set aside. No choice. If you're in a couple, the first person that needs long-term care can mess up the other one. And what happens is people go, well, Medicare will cover you. No, Medicare does not cover long-term care at all. Medicaid does once you've run out of money. And it's one of those things like everybody's like, well, it's so expensive, I just can't handle it. I'm like, what's your choice?
Yeah. What's the alternative? Right.
Yeah. Medicaid care sucks. I'm just going to tell you that right now. Like, there are some nice facilities, but they're very rare and you're not going to get a space in them. Like, I'm just kind of how that works. Or do we find like a continuing care retirement community, or there's a bunch of options, but you have to have a plan kind of around your age. And people go, well, I'm not going to think about that till later. Well, you wait till you're 60. And next thing you know, as soon as you have a diagnosis of something, forget it. You can't get insurance, or, the costs have gone through the roof. I mean, it's just crazy.
It's and that's why I brought it up initially, is because when I think of working with a financial planner, I think of anticipating costs in retirement that I may not be thinking of right now. And I know one of those costs for me is going to be long-term care insurance. And it's, people think of meeting with their financial planner, their financial advisor, their stock guy, and it's all about just increasing the nest egg, but there's all these other aspects of it. And when you are child free, this is a conversation you need to have. And like you said, I think you really need to have it earlier, not at 60, because we need to prepare for all these factors.
Yeah. And so we are a SEC registered investment advisory firm. I just hired a new planner, and they asked me kind of like, how much time do you spend on investments? I'm like, I don't know, 5% of my time, 10% on a crazy case. And they're like, okay, then what do you spend your time on? I'm like, all the other stuff. Yeah, we call what we do life and financial planning. So there was an assumption you just put in there about raising your nest egg. Well, child-free folks as a whole don't care about how much they pass around to the next generation.
Oh, yeah.
My nephews get what's left over. They get a 10 grand, 100 grand, that's fine. If they get $1 million, I made a mistake because I should have given it to them throughout their life, or I could have spent it. Or, if you're going to die with zero, well, just running up the scoreboard doesn't help you. And it's all of these things, so, all right, we got to figure out long-term care. We got to die with zero. Most child-free folks don't care about retirement. Like, it starts changing all of these base assumptions. And then you go to your financial planner and you're like, hi, I'm 40 and I want to plan for long-term care. And you probably got the, I don't know what to do with that. Like, I even say to people, if you're going to go to a financial planner, ask them how your plan is different because you're child-free. If they say, well, you change your mind, just walk out. Like, because you will occasionally get those judgments. If they say, well, it's no different, you got to walk out too, because it's like, it is different. Sounds like you had the third case, which is, how's it different? They went, I don't know. I'm going to figure it out. I'm okay with that answer. Like, that's fair. I think the challenge there is like, well, what else aren't they looking at? And how do we fit it? Like, another great example, life insurance for child-free folks, very little or no value. Disability insurance, huge value. It's all these things that change that people don't think about.
Yeah, the life insurance thing, it's funny that we mentioned the fact that your ability to get long-term care insurance would change with diagnoses, right? I got my term life policy probably 6 months before my mom's cancer diagnosis. The rate that I have for the payout that I have that expires in 15 years or whatever it is, I would have gotten an eighth of that had I waited 6 months. And I tell that to my clients all the time. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yep.
And so I just lucked out that I was like, I'm going to get long-term care insurance. I had already, term life insurance. Jay and I have spoken about Dave Ramsey and his principles and things like that, when we first met, but I hadn't gotten term life yet. And I was already kind of coaching people. This is years and years and years ago. And the timing was just perfect.
Yeah.
And man, I couldn't recreate that again if you held a gun to my head. If you gave me $1 million, I couldn't recreate that opportunity again because I will never have it again.
And you won't be able to get that rate again.
Never. Right. No. Once I'm done with this one, I know the gig is up.
Right. But let's check back on you. Now you run your own business. Do you have your own disability insurance?
I do, through the same company, actually.
Okay. This is important. So I talk to a lot of people that run their own business and they don't have disability insurance because it wasn't offered by the employer. I'm like, you still need one. I don't care what you do for a living. You need disability, because people are like, well, Social Security company. No, Social Security gets you like $1,300 a month or something like that. I mean, it's literally like that, like $1,000, $1,500, something like that a month. And you're going to live on that till you're 65? No.
Yeah.
And like, it's all these things that just that little twist makes a big difference.
Yeah. I have a client, they're both coming up on retirement age. They did their initial Social Security appointments, $800 a month.
Yep. Not going to live off that.
How is that helping anyone? It's crazy. And they're smart enough to know that that's not going to be their entire income. They're going to have to do other things. But boy, were they shell shocked because they are 66. They're not filing for it yet, but they're getting to that age where it's like, oh, let me look into this and what I'm going to have to do and take a little trip down to the Social Security office, because it's probably not down the street from you. It's usually in a larger city near you. And they were shocked because at that age, their age, they had been told, unlike our generation, they've been told this is going to cover you. Whereas when I was in high school, I had one teacher who explained Social Security, and I looked up and I said, this doesn't make any sense. And he said, exactly.
So, okay. So here's a fun one. Social Security, we'll pick on that. And you're right. I'm 46 and the odds that I'm going to get a full payment for Social Security is pretty low. I mean,
yeah.
Well, I'll probably get something, but I'm not counting it at all in my plan. But I'll do these podcasts and I have folks, that have kids and they go, well, if you people don't have kids, Social Security is going to fall apart. And they're actually right. Social Security is based on constant growth. It's a pyramid scheme. Okay. Like, not technically, but it is. It's based on the younger generations have to pay for the older ones.
Yeah.
And we're actually here in 2024, and this is the peak 65 year, like this is when we're having the most 65-year-olds. I'm paying for the people there. People think there's like an account with your name in it. No. So they'll say, well, you child-free folks are not having kids, so the system's going to fall apart. I'm like, listen, the system's screwed up. It's not me. Like, whether I have kids or not is not changing the structure of the system. And it's funny because there's all these things in the economy and Social Security, other things that are based on constant growth. That if you go, hey, we're not going to have 6 kids anymore, if we're not, a lot of folks are not going to have kids, the system needs to change.
Yeah.
And you'll actually see child-free folks talking about that as part of the reason why they won't have kids, where like the environment's a reason, financial reason, medical reason. I mean, like huge reasons that they've thought through. And I'm like, well, then the problem is Social Security, not us. Like the problem is the system's broken. Right. And somebody asked me, how do you fix it? I'm like, oh, that's above my pay grade.
I'm not sure there's anyone in the country with that pay grade. So yes, I have not. I literally stopped relying on Social Security when I was 16 years old. It didn't make sense to me. I sat there in that high school classroom and I said, this is screwed up. It doesn't make any sense. Like you said, it's totally screwed up. Speaking of screwed up, Jay, I know that you've had some financial problems in the past, just like we all have. So what would you say was the dumbest thing you ever did with money before you became Dr. J?
So it's funny you talk about high school. When I went to high school, the only thing they taught me was how to balance a checkbook, which is
they did that part? We didn't even get that.
Well, that was part of home ec. You learned how to make blueberry muffins and a draft dodger and how to balance a checkbook. So, I mean, the most useless. And I actually, when I got out of high school, my parents didn't have a lot of money. My father's bus driver, my mother was disabled. I actually ended up going to New York City for a couple of years and actually made my first $1 million by the time I was 21. And I got lucky in the .com world, hit an IPO. Awesome. I spent that by the time I was 25. Now, people go, what? Well, listen, you get a 21-year-old $1 million, you think you know what's going to happen to it.
Yeah.
And I did some good things with it. I paid for some schooling for my sister and some stuff for my parents. And I did a lot of things to help people, but didn't know how to manage money because I didn't. I never learned it. And now me being, a whole lot older, I'm like, well, it'd be nice if I had known that stuff, but I didn't, and it's interesting. You mentioned Dave Ramsey. So I found his stuff by mistake, essentially, but my wife and I was one of those that always had a car with a loan on it, and just the payment always stayed the same, but I always got a new car and all this other stuff. And after my wife and I got married, we actually paid off her car. And I was like, oh, it's possible to pay off something? There was that moment, I never thought about that. Just never was part of it. And I actually became a Rams preferred coach and did a lot of stuff there and used that, the debt-free philosophies. Yeah, that's awesome. A lot of that stuff was like, hey, I wish I had learned it a long time ago. But I also sometimes stop and go, well, do you really learn the lessons before you get smacked with them? I met with somebody this weekend. I was at a convention and she'd always just had money from her family kind of magically come from the sky. And it's always kind of bailed her out of whatever mistakes she's made. And I realized, so my PhD is in adult learning, and I'm looking at this from a learning standpoint. She's never actually hit either rock bottom or had the trouble or had the struggle. So why learn? And I'm not judging her. I'm not saying she's doing anything wrong, but you almost, if you don't do something dumb with money, you can't learn from it.
Absolutely.
And that's the hard part is we try to prevent issues. Long-term care. Well, if you wait to learn about that till you're old and need it, you're screwed. I hate to put it that way, but that is. And we try to tell people, hey, I've seen this before. Here's how to prevent this. Sometimes you just need to do it. And I think that's what the 25-year-old version of me had to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's not, the whole point of me starting this show is to bring on the financial coaches, the financial planners, the insurance experts. And that's kind of why, I'll bring in authors for books regarding college costs and things like that. But the people who still work in the financial industry, to me, it's so important to show the audience that we've all been there, right? And we wouldn't be in these positions today in the financial field had we not screwed up earlier on. I've had a couple of people say on this show when I ask the question, if you could go back in time, what would you do differently? A handful of people have said nothing. I would have let it still happen. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those, I don't like to look back and go, what if, or, the regrets or all that, so you learn from it. My research is around experiential learning, and it turns out adults learn when we have experiences and when we all learn something. So you kind of have to go through the struggles. Did it suck? Yeah, but it's kind of part of the process, and you could almost rob yourself from the education by not doing it. Now, luckily, none of my mistakes were I made giant financial mistakes that set me back for no, I didn't. That wasn't the issue, but it made me look at it differently. When I came out of high school, I couldn't afford college. Well, come early mid-20s, I said, okay, I want to go back to school. I was actually able to look at it differently because I was paying for out of pocket, and I had gone through some ups and downs. And I was actually able to go from no degree to a Ph.D. in 5.5 years, and it cost me less than $9,000. Okay. That's because I learned oh, hey, I don't want to take out more debt. I don't want to, I don't have the money to do this. I need to figure out a different solution. So I don't know. Maybe that saved me a couple $100,000 in student loans, if you want to look at it that way.
Absolutely. Where, if you could go back and 21-year-old Jay, 23-year-old Jay realized something and said, "Ooh, I don't really know what I'm doing with this $1 million. I should go look for information." Where do you think you would have gone?
So I think the challenge is, if you go back, that's 20 years. I'm getting old now. If you go back 20 years, there wasn't a lot of information out there. Okay. So it's a different world now. For that 23-year-old version of me now, there are a lot of resources and a lot of ways to get help. You can actually pay financial planners just for hourly, just to hey, can I pick your brain? Work with a coach, you can do different things. I think the challenge is right now, there's actually probably too much information. So if you Google, there's a lot of different financial plans out there. Well, the problem is, if you take the Ramsey plan, which is a no debt plan, you combine it with the Cardone plan, which is the all debt plan, you get a mess where you can actually have too much. And I'm actually working through this with somebody right now. They have a lot of money, but the plans are 4 different things put together. I'm like, you did not make a plan here. You got a little good thing here and a good thing here. But when you put these two together, they start conflicting with each other. And I think that's where a professional can help and go, okay, how about we make a plan that fits you? Not, oh yeah, that looks cool on TikTok.
Oh, please don't. The financial advice that is getting dished out on TikTok it's so maddening right now. I really wish we could go back to the TikTok days, and I'm not even on it. I just hear in conversation what people are saying. I would like to go back about 2 years ago, where most of what my friends were talking about was the cool recipe they found on TikTok. If we could go back to that, that would be awesome.
Or the dance they learned or something.
Or the dance the dance that they and their grandma, they taught their grandma. Please, let's go back and do that. Let's not get our financial advice from TikTok. What I remember, the only thing I remember at 2013, 23, whatever, the only financial person I could have named was Susie Orman. I no idea who Dave Ramsey was. Probably knew Warren Buffett, but more of just a textbook business class type knowing of Warren Buffett type thing. Would not have been able to tell you who Larry Burkett was, any of that stuff. And now, like you said, there are so many options out there. There's so many different plans. Finding the one that's right for you is your best solution. However, sometimes you really do need that professional to step in and say, here's a third set of eyes, a second set of eyes. Here's an objective view. Here's why I think the Cardone plan is perfect for you. Here's why I think Rich Dad, Poor Dad is perfect for you. Here's why you're right on track with Dave Ramsey. But having that set of eyes come in, because you're a little too close to it sometimes, personally, not you, Jay, but
so we just started offering what we call them the Childfree Wealth Checkup. And for lack of a better way to explain it, if you've ever taken your car to get the oil changed, you get the oil changed, but then you get like your wipers are kind of nasty and your tires are, but this is good in that, like you get that checklist. And we started doing this, and we have this financial information form. It takes about 2 hours for people to fill out because we get statements, copy their statements and their tax returns and all that. And they give us all this information. Then it takes us about 3-4 hours to go through it. And then we sit down with them and talk about, okay, here's where you are. And our measures, we want to simplify your finances so your life can be amazing. So we're kind of looking at how simple your finances are and how amazing your life is. And we're finding this balancing act. And we're really looking through this child-free lens. And if you came to us, great example, we would have said, hey, you don't have a plan for long-term care. That's something you need to work on. So we're doing this checkup, and we charge $500 for it. And we just launched it this month and had a great response. But what it is, it's just a chance for somebody to look over your shoulder and go, yep, good here, bad here. Like example, I had somebody very simple, look at their emergency fund. They've got like 2 years of their expensive emergency fund. I'm like, listen, you went too far.
Yeah.
It's possible to go too far on your, or another person, we look at their investments and they got all these high front load fees where they're paying 5-6% to get into things. I'm like, hold up, you're paying thousands and thousands of dollars on your investments, or, you have no insurance. So we're using this checkup as kind of like a second set of eyes, or just a chance to talk to a professional and go, yeah, how am I doing? Now, we're intentionally, we charge for it because you're paying for our time.
Yeah.
Essentially not selling our product. We have a long-term, flat fee financial planning, how we do. Like, look, if you want us to help us with this, go, great. If you want to take this plan and go figure it out yourself, cool. And here's some references. But like just that checkup of like, how am I doing? And I don't really want to be a scorecard, like a grade, but like, where am I doing well and what do I need to work on? And one of our clients had given this idea because he called it the unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
He was like a heavy fire person. He was doing great on stuff. He's like, what don't I know? And I was like, that's an amazing question. Like our entire financial planning process is about 77 steps. So we're looking at things and going, okay, which of these 77 do you need? What are you missing? Where's it going? And it's like, oh, I didn't think of that. Like one of our steps, we actually have a program. We call it the 8 no baby steps, unlike the Ramsey baby steps, but that's okay. And no baby step 7 is plan for parents. Now you already talked about, hey, not big issue for you,
right?
Might be for your husband, might be for others. Like, what do their finances look like? Are you gonna have to take care of them? And what we tend to find with plan for parents, the only parents we take on are parents or child-free folks, is either they're broker than we thought or richer than we thought. Like they're getting a giant inheritance, or the parents are broke and we're gonna have to carry everything. I'm finding very, very few cases in the middle where the parents are just good.
Ugh.
And like, okay, cool. If your parents are broke, are you gonna care for that? Or if you're getting a couple $1 million inheritance, what's part of your plan? And people are like,
what are we doing with it? Right.
That. I'm not going to do anything until it happens. I'm like, no, you're living in La La Land. Like this is all part of your plan. And we do this look at it and people go, I never thought about, and they just make a list. We're like, cool. We are not asking you to fix it all today. Pick 1 or 2. Let's do that. And let's make 1 or 2 changes at a time. We meet our clients monthly and we make 1 or 2 changes at a time. That way you don't have to figure it all out, but let's do it all. But just that measure. And, I guess that's what I really would have loved 20 years ago was somebody just to look at it and go, yeah, you're screwing this up. You're doing well over here.
Yeah.
Hey,
Jay, your your front bumper's about to fall off and you didn't even know it.
Right.
Yeah. That. Yeah. If we could all go back, we would pick up that checklist, but we'll end on this note. They need to have the motivation to pick up the checklist.
So I've actually tracked this. When we meet with clients, they'll either sign up as a client in the first week or 2 after we meet with them, or I'll see them about a year later.
Oh,
and
yes.
I was like, what's going on? Like I had to dive deep into it. Like the answer is when you're ready for change, I'm here.
Yeah.
There are people that are ready now, and other people like a year later. I think the year's magic because they're like, a year ago I met with this guy and I probably should have done some things and I didn't, and it got worse. And I'm like, okay, come on back. It's funny because I don't try to motivate people because you can't. Just like when you're ready, we're here. And usually that's either when something bad happens or something like, they got a giant inheritance or something amazing happened. When people are just like doing okay, that's really when they should dig in, but they don't want to because
you're going to
haven't
the
done
apple cart. You're upsetting status quo at that point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
I think the longest period of time for me was 3.5 years. I had a consultation with somebody, and 3.5 years later, they signed up, went through a full year of coaching with me, and came back a couple times after that when they got a mortgage and such. So we're going to be doing a special interview with Jay that's going to be coming out next week, which is really exciting. We're going to delve deeper into this topic because this is something that has never come up in 2.5 years of me doing this show. And so we're going to dig deeper into all of this, and we hope that you guys enjoy it. Thanks for joining me today, Jay, and we will all see you next week.